I mean, there's a question about what is a shaman and what is not, but there are spiritual voyagers throughout world cultures. You find it. There's a big literature on shamanism. The Axis Mundus in the desert was a fire, but the Axis Mundus can take a variety of forms itself. And so, for example, the big pyramids that were built by the Aztecs were considered holy mountains. They were they were charged with spiritual energy, and they were sacralized by ritual, and also through another form, and that is that they believed that if they captured sacred objects from enemy groups or brought them in through another form and accumulated them at the bottom of the pyramid or integrated into the pyramid, that would enhance the sacredness of that site. So the pyramid itself then becomes the image of the sacred mundus. And there can be a fire at the top, or there may not be. But the fires are around. In fact, one of the most spectacular fire ceremonies was the Aztec New Fire Ceremony that happened every 52 years, in which all the fires of the empire were put out. The king and his court would go up to a mountain outside of Tenochtitlan, and waiting for the Pleiades to show them at what precise time, they would ignite a new fire in the chest of a newly sacrificed victim, and then taking the flame from that fire would then spread the fire first back to the temple of Tenochtitlan, the major temple, and then from there through the city and then through the rest of the empire. And so from all lights out to all lights on would be the process. They also had the Axis Mundus is also commonly represented by a tree or a pole, so that, for example, when the Spaniards came to Maya land, they discovered that the Mayans were receptive to the image of the cross, because for the Maya they had several images of the Axis Mundus. One was the sacred ceiba tree, which is a tree specific to Mayan territory, and it's a big, tall, majestic tree. But they also illustrated the Axis Mundus in the form of a foliated cross. And the foliated cross was, again, representation of the Axis Mundus. So when the Mayan adopted the Christian cross, the Spaniards thought, oh, they've become Christianized. What the Mayans were actually doing was taking the Christian cross and substituting for their own images, so they continue their pagan worship, without the Spaniards disturbing them. The Axis Mundus, for example, in many of the Plains cultures, it is a tree, a newly cut tree that is used for their sacred fire ceremonies. Also, the directional aspects. When they create tents in lodges for their ceremonies and even for common habitation, they are oriented to the principal directions, and the number of poles in a tent have to do with the astronomical aspect of where they think the major directions are. One of the things that I found just a couple of other examples, and I'll open up to questions. What I found is that, for example, the Axis Mundus could be personalized by a person, so that the Maya king and Aztec king could become the walking Axis Mundus for their culture. The Axis Mundus could be opened up ritually, and so you didn't have to travel to communicate with the gods and the spirits. It was, for example, burning incense was a way to send messages up. Diego de Landa, one of the friars who destroyed Maya records but also then kept his own journal and gave us some accounts, records that the Mayans basically worshipped in a fog of incense. And the incense, and when they traveled, they would stop along the road and put their little 3 stones down, start a fire, and have burn incense. They would say their prayers. The incense, the smoke of the incense, would carry their prayers up to the gods. And same thing happens among the North American Indians, and some of them have. It depends on what the reporters are telling you, what they emphasize. what they noticed among the North American Indians is that they had something called the calumet pipe. It's a long pipe, very often richly decorated, and you see it in the stereotypical Western movies. Those of you who got to see Westerns before they went out of style, some young people don't know what a Western is anymore. And so if I mention John Wayne, they don't know who that guy was. You know, Clint Eastwood, they don't know these guys. And the most recent movie that might have shown some ritual like that is Dances with Wolves, and that was I think that's far enough in time so that nobody remembers that either. But if you remember in the stereotypical scenes, they would pass the peace pipe. Well, yes, that is a peace pipe, but the idea is to ritually open up the axis mundus, and smoking the peace pipe sanctifies your agreement and your meeting with the other people there. And the smoke is carrying out your messages and bringing up that sanctity to you. And the smoking the peace pipe then creates a sacred bond between you and the other people that are treating. So if you're trading, now you have a sacred bond for this contract. If you are making peace, you now have a sacred bond for this contract. If you're making alliances against another group, you are making a bond to go through with the contract. And then just to coming back to finish with the desert inhabitants, what the sacred fire did was the same thing that the church and the Mass does for Christians. And that is, when you have a rite of passage, or when you're doing anything important, you want to sacralize it and give it importance by having God present there and saying this is a holy ceremony. So in both religions, cosmovisions, you have any birthing rituals or baptism, marital rituals, death rituals, burials and ceremony, and other stages of life. At the sacred fires or camps, they would also, particularly one chronicler says this happened when they were down and their minds were in outer space. That's the time when they would be scarified and tattooed. You know, their bodies would be have messages and symbols inscribed in them. You know, it was a very bloody process. You're basically scarring and tattooing. And so it was good that they were doing it while the persons were unconscious. And of course, these tattoos and scarification are signs of status within the group, and it also identifies you to groups outside of you. So these are identifications. Somebody once said that human beings at that stage are walking billboards. They telegraph, you know, who you are, what your status is within your group, and you can even have elite members tattooed one way and submissive members tattooed another. And so my conclusion is that from looking at practices and the reported beliefs of natives in various situations in the Americas and other world regions, that there is a universality. I'm not claiming for every single human group, but from the ones that I have found, there's huge representation of this cosmological belief in a power that inhabits all of nature, that we are a manifestation of it, and that there's a portal to be used, and that we're communicating with the gods. And I have a couple of other things rolling around in my head, but I think I'll stop here and open up to any other questions. Okay. Well, for example, one of the key concepts that comes from this is that, and it's not found stated in all of the literature, but it's found stated in some of the literature, is the, this leads me to, well, how is this a critique?